Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Ahead of the release of DC's latest animated film, Injustice, social media websites are awash with a snippet from the movie that depicts Kashmir as a disputed region. The clip that is going viral shows Superman and Wonder Woman destroying all military equipment in Kashmir and declaring it as an arms-free zone. Several social media users took to Twitter and other platforms to highlight how DC had portrayed Kashmir as a contested region and painted India in a very bad light. And let's talk about this with our panelists. Joining me on the show to talk more about this strange phenomena is Colonel Dinesh Nain, Foreign Policy and Affairs expert. Also joining us on the show is Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also here with us. And last but by no means the least, Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, is joining us on this conversation as well. Professor Nalapat, what do you make of this? Even cartoons are talking about Kashmir now, and they're showing Kashmir as a disputed region. Is this a part of the misinformation warfare that was promulgated by Pakistan, and this is perhaps a consequence of that?
Well, I'd like to point out that according to what I'm seeing in some of these Twitter threads, it's a situation where Superman has gone rogue almost, and is obviously, he's behaving in a roguish manner. I'd like to point out that it's unfortunate how easy it is now in social media to misuse social media for a personal agenda. Now you have the Sino-Wahhabi alliance. They are well entrenched in different parts of the world, including in the two big democracies, India and the US. And you've seen, for example, on searches in so many of these social media platforms, it's very easy to come up with anti-India rants. And the part about which is pro-India, or rather more accurate, is very deep down. So this is a deliberate tinkering of algorithms. In this particular case, I think it's important for this particular publishing house to identify who is behind this kind of very clear personal agenda, because it's a agenda based on the interests of one particular country. And if I may point out, and possibly poor Superman is known for his muscular ability. I'm not sure he's known for anything more than that. Certainly not intellectual capacity or knowledge of geopolitics. But I'd like to point out that the minorities in Pakistan have steadily fallen. Their lives are miserable. And the same thing is happening in Afghanistan. The same thing is happening in some other locations. And yet the attempt by the Sino-Wahhabi alliance is to demonize India. The purpose of that is very clear: to demonize the world's largest democracy. And secondly, to delegitimize our democracy, to kind of make believe that India is no democracy. And in fact, what that does is essentially to give a free pass to the genuine authoritarian state, China, and its close ally, the military-ruled state of Pakistan. So I'd like to point out it's very important to take this up very seriously, privately or otherwise, and to ensure that an inquiry gets launched into who is behind this kind of fake messaging, because it's very clear they have a personal agenda. And, and if this agenda is allowed to run amok, it can do a lot of damage. It cannot not only be India, it could be in the US also, that attacks are made. Because don't forget, the US and India are both targets of this alliance.
Absolutely. Colonel Nain, where do you stand on this? Obviously, the sensitivities which countries possess in terms of, the internal issues and conflicts have to be addressed, by other countries, specifically America, who are known for making these comics and known for making these cartoons and, taking the Marvel and the DC comic universe to a whole different level together. But the popularity of these platforms does not mean that they can delve into these issues without knowing the facts, without knowing the ground realities.
Well, I would like to say that when have we seen Al Jazeera, BBC, New York Times, Washington Post, ever talking good about us. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan can go to America and publish a complete whole page, front page, just by giving some money to the New York Times guys, and anti-India propaganda, full swing. So this has been done with India by the certain agencies, unethical practice, yes, from journalism point of view also, and as far as social media is concerned. But then what India has to see is these countries like America and Britain, who consider us to be the friends, who are trying to make Quad with us in Pacific region, Indo-Pacific region, who are trying to make a Quad in Gulf region with Israel and America and Saudi Arabia with India. And on the other hand, they are trying to permit these comics to this kind of a propaganda, which is very unethical and should not be taken by India in a lighter manner. India is a sovereign country. We are the biggest, largest democracy, and we are still yet to take back our Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit area, which is sovereign land of India. Or instead of describing Pakistan forces, sitting there occupying our area, these comics are trying to do it other way around and support the Pakistani propaganda that Indian forces are doing some kind of a unethical work and some kind of a suppressive work with the Kashmiris and all. This is ridiculous, and I think should be taken with American people seriously. Well, I would like to say one more thing here. I don't know, but from last few days, I'm again and again getting this kind of realization that we are losing our best friend called Russia. We have given it to Pakistan and China so easily, take away.
We've lost that best friend already. Colonel Len, we've already lost that best friend. We're not losing that best friend.
Most reliable friend. The Sukhoi 57 aircraft, which people are now talking about that America is scared of it, was being constructed in India with HAL, and the deal was scrapped. I don't know for what reasons. In 2018, promos we are making with Russia.
Okay.
What was the big deal with Sukhoi 57?
All right. Okay, our conversation is not about Russia and Sukhoi, but nevertheless, I appreciate your sentiments. Joyita Basu. All right. I'll come back to you, Colonel Len. Joyita Basu, what if India made a cartoon and it showed, Shaktiman, destroying, all the establishment that the Americans had in Afghanistan? Would they be happy about it?
Well, I don't think they actually follow Shaktiman. The problem with this particular cartoon comic strip is that, DC is very popular, not just in America. DC comics.
So is Kashmir. So is Kashmir, it seems, and the problems in Kashmir.
No. Hold on. And it's very popular, and it's very problematic because and this is a deliberate act of mischief. What they have done in this particular case is that when they are mentioning this Kashmir thing, they have mentioned the fictional country along with that. So when you are using, and that is how all these comic books and these, because these are pop culture. These are pop culture. They do not get into, they do not get into, say, Israel-Palestine conflict. Although there is a flag they have showed where the Israelis are signing a peace deal with somebody else. So the thing is, the problem that happens is that when you are using fictional countries, names of fictional countries, suddenly as a disputed area, you are putting in the name of Kashmir over there, and you are showing that in how Indian army and Indian military jets are being disabled by these people, how our missiles are being disabled by them. And so the whole point is that, so obviously it's an act of mischief. So we have to see who exactly are the people behind it, because this kind of insertion can only happen when there is either a direct Pakistani involvement or there is a direct Chinese involvement. Now, when we are looking at Hollywood, for example, Hollywood runs a lot on Chinese money, because what happens is, a lot of these films that Hollywood, even though China says that it wants to be a superpower and all, when it comes to America, they're totally fascinated by its soft power. And they're totally fascinated with Hollywood movies and all. So Hollywood movies, and you also follow, I also follow. When you look at DC or for Marvel comics, they are nowadays bringing in Chinese characters. If you have watched that Shang-Chi movie that came, I think it's still
Sure.
running. So they are bringing in Chinese mythological characters. So there's a huge market in China, and to which they are catering. If you look at Hollywood movies closely, if you even look at Star Wars, I would say for that matter, that the spin-offs that they have of Star Wars, they have started introducing Pakistani and Chinese characters in that, in a one particular. And this has been happening, I think, because of Chinese insistence and Chinese money. There's a major effort being put in place in terms of whitewashing Pakistan's, wherever the Chinese money is involved, you will get in some kind of a small mention of Pakistan, where you know how Pakistan is affected by terrorism, how Pakistani, there is suddenly a Pakistani hero coming in. You know, all these things, small insertions are happening. So basically, this is what China excels in. They use what the democratic world excel in, and they use it against us. You know, that is what China always does. And that is what exactly China is doing when it comes to pop culture. That is what they are doing. So I think we need to find out who exactly are the people behind it. But I'm certain, and more importantly, but at the same time, that the mistake that they are making is that, you see, in that country which rides on donkey carts and bullock carts, I'm talking about Pakistan, they don't have a market. When you look at the DC verse or Marvel universe, they are focused, whatever, I mean, when it comes to the subcontinent, when it comes to South Asia, India is the market, not Pakistan. So that is why you have to hit them. You boycott this, you do not let, even if it is released, you have to spread the message that, and other thing is that a solid campaign should be launched in terms of, you have to remove this reference. That is something that you have to do.
All right, absolutely. Gautam, has it come down to this now, that, the complicated issue of Kashmir is going to be solved by Superman now?
Well, Vineet, one of the things to remember is that Marvel has been doing very much better than DC of late. And a lot of Marvel movies have been made which have been very successful. Now, these people have been competing right from the pre-Second World War era. And Superman is really a Second World War creature to boost American morale, the super person who can set rights to wrong and defend democracy and so on. Now, they need to update their image. If this is an animated movie and they have leaked this sequence in order, I believe, to create a controversy and perhaps generate some interest in figures like Wonder Woman and Superman, who have lost their bouquet in the contest between the Marvel heroes and the DC heroes. Now, having said that, I take most of what Joyita said on board as well, that there is a lot of Chinese money. There is possibly some Pakistani involvement either in the production or perhaps in the animation, though I doubt if they can draw any better than they can fight. But there is a backhanded compliment as well. If you take this in a lighter vein, they're calling for a weapons-free zone. A weapons-free zone. Why? Because they can't seem to get the better of us. That's one way to look at it. At the same time, a campaign needs to be mounted about this kind of vilification of a region and a serious politics which is so very current. You can't really fictionalize something that is happening between Monday and Friday and hope to get away with it unless you're badly motivated to do so. I mean, let's remember satanic verses. That wasn't even fiction. The man, Rushdie, was an Islamic scholar. And what he pointed to were the verses that empowered women. And look what happened to him and that book.
Absolutely. Professor Nalapa, the question that comes to my mind right now is that, obviously if, this has been shown in this particular cartoon movie, that means there's a lot of work that has gone into it. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of perception building, there's a lot of image changeover which has gone into this. And that's definitely good for Pakistan, but not good for the position that India is maintaining at this point in time. How do we change that?
Well, I'd like to point out that, until very recently, we've always been very hesitant to produce our narrative and the facts about that narrative. Now, take, for example, this whole question of Superman destroying jets. I mean, the reality is that aircraft have never been used in India, unlike in Pakistan, against civilian populations. In Kashmir, they have been used in rare instances against Pakistan. So the direct interest is the Pakistan military against whom aircraft are used. Now, you don't have, for example, any kind of heavy artillery used against civilians. You don't have, bombs, for example, dumped on civilians, the way they have routinely been in Pakistan and its all-weather ally. So the reality of the situation, it's a completely wrong characterization. And I do believe that it's very, very important to understand that this is not a laughing matter for the simple reason that young people are addicted to this kind of comic books and to this kind of video, and they're given an alternate reality that they start believing in. We've all seen this world of fake news. Now you have this biggest fake news that the world's biggest democracy is actually a dictatorship, and a country that is a complete theology that is oppressing its minorities is actually a really wonderful country, a genuine democracy. So this is the narrative that's being peddled, and they're doing it in the younger generation. And I think it's important to realize that this has to be taken very seriously, and those who are responsible have to be identified. I'll end with Joyita's point about the market. Yes, we are a very huge market, and I think we should make it very, very clear that this kind of an activity is not congruent with any kind of entertainment series that purports to be non-political and non-divisive. This is an intensely wrong, divisive characterization, and I'd like to say that it's obviously meant to influence the young, especially in the United States, so that they grow up believing India is not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. We can laugh at it because we know it's not true. But the fact is that messaging has got to be tackled in a much more systematic way than we have seen over the last 70 and odd years.
Absolutely. Colonel Nain, taking a leaf out of what Professor Nalapat said, that, this is a dangerous precedent for the younger generation. And this is something which has to be nibbed right now. What are your suggestions?
To explain it in layman language, I think the Pakistan narrative that we are kafir and we are fighting the kafir people in Kashmir. This kind of a narrative, this kind of a propaganda and ideology, it is spread by DC on the name of entertainment. I think it's highly objectionable, because today the situation in Kashmir, target killings, the way Pakistan is trying to, spread the terrorism using ISIS, Khorasan, and other agencies which names are now coming up. I think it's a very serious matter. Government of India should take immediate action against any kind of entertainment which DC is trying to provide to our country. And as a military man, I feel that it's a very strong statement which this particular entertainment series is making, and which is highly objectionable. We have lost so many people in Kashmir, and I think any army guy would get very angry on any such stupid people who are trying to, outrage us by propagating such kind of an ideology which is not at all true on the ground.
All right. Well, let's also listen in now to this clip which has been going viral on social media, where Superman is talking about basically making Kashmir, a free zone, free of arms. Listen in.
Declaring it an arms-free. Declaring it an arms-free.
Superman does not have the first clue, Joyita, of what's really going on in Kashmir, and nor do the people who have come up with this idea of putting in Kashmir into this this type of a movie or a cartoon. In little terms, it is a cartoon for that matter. I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Professor Nalapat. How can we change that? Obviously, there's a lot of groundwork done to this misinformation, which is basically culminating in Superman saying what he is.
Well, if you look at it, it kind of represents some kind of a woke culture now that you see so much in the West in particular. There are these woke people, and then there is this certain issues they're picking up. So at the same time, we have to look at it. Why is it Kashmir suddenly? When everything is fictional in whatever in your film, suddenly you pick up one issue that is of Kashmir. So I would not say it is clueless. I would say it has been deliberately inserted for the intent of making mischief, because you see, to give out the message, it works at a very subliminal level. It is not very overt. It works at a subliminal level. It works kind of, you realize it, and you get conditioned to believe that Kashmir is an occupied territory. So I would not say that it is clueless, but I would say somebody has done it. Somebody has done it, deliberately done it. But at the same time, I agree with Mr. Mukherjee when he says that, when we are looking at DC and Marvel is way ahead. But even then, DC still has Superman, Batman, Aquaman for that matter, and Wonder Woman. There are occasional sparks of brilliance. It's not that it is not there, and all of us watch it. Watch their characters and follow their exploits. So the whole point is now is the time to protest. If you remember, there was a particular TV show, I've forgotten the name, it was about FBI, and Priyanka Chopra was acting in it. I think one of her first TV shows, it was an English, one of the network TV shows that was there, it was a series. Now there, what they did at one particular point, they had an episode where they showed Hindus blowing up New York, Hindu terrorists blowing up American cities. So there was a huge problem over that. And Priyanka Chopra had to apologize, if I remember correctly. So I think they had to edit that thing or something, but there was a hue and cry. It was taken up by the diaspora. They had a major problem. They had to issue an apology and all sorts of things, They had shown Hindu terrorists blowing up United States, some nonsense like that. So this is all a part of at one level, there is the ignorance of the Westerner, white Westerner. And then and what happens is, you see, there are these lobbies and Pakistanis and Chinese who take advantage of that ignorance to basically do their own agenda. And the problem that is there among the I would say NRIs who are there in the Hollywood industry and all, is that they tend to identify themselves with the woke crowd, because unless you are woke, that is the problem with Hollywood. Hollywood is extremely left right now, very woke right now, and there is a disconnect definitely between, whenever it comes to politics, there's a huge disconnect between what the Hollywood is portraying and what the Americans are thinking. So there are protests coming in from the Americans as well in terms of what Hollywood is portraying reality to be. So the Indians who are also working in Hollywood, who are involved in the West entertainment industry in the West, they do not say anything. They are not the ones who will protest anything, and they will go with the flow. So that is why, people like, our actors and actresses, when they go abroad and they do these movies and all, they try to be Roman when in Rome. Okay, right. and that is the major problem. Okay. So the protest government cannot do anything here.
Okay, we've run out of time. Joyita. I'm going to take a quick closing comment from Gautam, and then we're going to wrap up. Gautam?
Well, this business of distorted history and propaganda is very rife in India as well. Specifically to address this, I think there ought to be a diplomatic protest from the MEA to their authorities, to the State Department, saying that, look, you're meant to be our Quad ally. You should do something about this. This should be deleted before the film is released officially, which is imminent. It's in about a month or two. But having said that, this is, high season as well. Christmas is coming up. It's very important to do that. Now, in India, look at what the OTT platforms do. Look at what the NCRT has been teaching our children. Look at so much propaganda from academia. And we've sat on our hands and are only just beginning to address it in, I think, a fairly hesitant way. There is a lot, this controversy over Fab India, which is rife right now. You look at what people try and do, and they get away with it because there is a whole section of the Indian population which is, in favor of this kind of propaganda.
Right.
We have to think about that.
Right, absolutely. And we definitely hope that in the next movie...
Can I make a quick point on this?
Quickly, Joyita, quickly.
Yeah, I'm certain even the Indian section of the population that is very woke and so-called, I will call it pseudo-left liberal, I don't think even they would like to see Indian planes being blown up by Superman and Indian army being killed off by Superman and Wonder Woman.
Right, absolutely. And we definitely hope that, in the next movie that they make about Superman, he's going to be focusing on what's happening in China, in Xinjiang, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in Afghanistan, and all the other areas which are of a larger concern than Kashmir would ever be. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this wonderful show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.